HOA enforcer yanked my kid off his bike. My husband trained special forces. I heard the scream before I saw the blood. We had just moved into Crestview Hills 2 weeks earlier. It was supposed to be a fresh start, new house, quiet streets, good schools. Our 10-year-old Noah was finally starting to make friends. He loved riding his bike after school, and every afternoon he'd cruise past our cul-de-sac, waving to the neighbors. That day, I was inside folding laundry when I heard him yell. Not a playful yell, an anguished, desperate cry that cut right through the quiet. Then I heard a man's voice, angry, forceful, and then metal scraping pavement. I dropped the laundry and ran. Noah was on the ground, tangled in his bike. His face was red and streaked with tears. Standing over him was a man I didn't recognize, stocky, mid-50s, red HOA vest zipped up tight like a badge of honor. "I told you this road is HOA protected," the man barked. No unauthorized kids speeding through. He had one hand still wrapped around Noah's backpack. I saw red. "Let him go," I screamed, running full speed across the lawn. The man, Robert Kendall, I'd learned later, glared at me like I was the intruder. "This child is in violation of community speed restrictions." He nearly hit my car mirror. "He's 10, I snapped, kneeling to untangle Noah's foot from the pedal. "And you just yanked him off his bike like a criminal. This is official HOA business." "No, this is assault." A crowd was gathering now. Neighbors on their porches, phones in hand, whispers rising. And then my husband arrived. He didn't drive. He ran, shirt soaked in sweat, boots thudding hard against the sidewalk. His name is Marcus, former Army Ranger, now a combat trainer for tactical units in the region. Calm, methodical, terrifying when provoked. He didn't yell, didn't posture. He stepped between the man and our son like a wall of iron. "Touch my kid again," he said in a voice so low I barely heard it. "And I swear you won't walk out of this neighborhood." Kendall stepped back, but not far enough. Marcus knelt down, checked Noah's scraped elbow, looked him in the eye, then turned to Kendall. "Who do you report to?" he asked. "I am the HOA authority for this district," Kendall said, puffing out his chest. "You people just moved in. You should know we don't allow reckless." Marcus cut him off. "There's no active HOA in Crestview Hills. I checked before we bought the house. You're wearing a vest and a lie." Gasps from the crowd. A woman behind me murmured. I knew something was off. Kendall stepped back, flushed, reaching for his fake badge. That's when Marcus took out his phone. "You have two choices," he said. "Walk away now, or stay and answer to law enforcement and me." Kendall opened his mouth to speak, but then someone shouted. I got it on camera that night. Noah couldn't sleep. He kept asking why a grown man had grabbed him, why nobody helped right away, why someone with a vest could hurt a kid and claim he was just doing his job. I tucked him in, heart burning, and I made a promise to myself right then I wasn't just going to protect my son. I was going to expose everything. The vest looked real. That was the part that fooled people. It was bright red, reflective strip across the back, and printed in bold white block letters, HOA Enforcement, Crestview Hills Division. But there was no such division. No board, no charter, no legally recognized HOA, period. And yet for over a year, Robert Kendall had worn that vest like it gave him the right to govern the block, like a petty dictator. Now he'd grab my child, and that made it personal. I started with the county clerk. Crestview Hills was zoned as a non-HOA neighborhood. The original developer folded before filing for any homeowner association governance. The only rules on the books were citywide trash pickup times, parking ordinances, standard zoning stuff. So how had Kendall gotten away with fines, warnings, and enforcement patrols? Simple, he printed them himself. Back at home, Marcus was making calls. He knew people, former military types, legal experts, even one guy who worked in the state's property oversight board. While I was on my laptop pulling HOA registration databases, Marcus was mapping Kendall's past. By the end of the night, we had a timeline. Robert Kendall moved into Crestview Hills 3 years ago. Created the Crestview HOA Compliance Watch 6 months later, sent out real-looking letters claiming a $75 annual fee and patrol fund, collected over $5,000 in unverified violations, threatened lawn service workers, kids on bikes, and even a pregnant woman for noise violations. None of it was real. All of it was intimidation. The next day, I went door to door. I asked every neighbor if they'd received a warning, a fine, or a personal visit from Kendall. Within 2 hours, I had 17 responses. 8 had paid his fines. 4 had security camera footage of him walking their yards. 2 had moved out of fear. 1, an elderly man named Mr. Hayes, had filed a police report but was told it was a civil matter. People didn't know what to do, so they did what most folks do when confronted by someone who sounds confident and carries a clipboard. They complied. That night, we held a meeting. Not at the clubhouse. Kendall had claimed exclusive access to that. We met in our garage, chairs pulled from the kitchen, soda in a cooler, my husband standing in the corner like a guardian. 30 people came, and when I stood up and said, "There is no HOA," you could feel the room shift. One woman started crying. Another man muttered, "All this time, we thought we had no choice." Marcus stepped forward. "There's always a choice. But people like Kendall, they make you believe you don't have one. They rely on silence, shame, fear." He paused. "That ends now." 2 days later, I walked into City Hall with a folder 2 inches thick. I submitted a formal complaint, signed by 23 residents, with video evidence, financial documentation, and a notarized report of the assault on our son. I copied the local police chief, the property crimes division, and the city's fraud unit. Within 24 hours, the investigation was opened. By day 3, Kendall's HOA patrol vest was confiscated as evidence, and by day 5, he was served. His defense: he wasn't trying to defraud anyone. He just wanted to help. He claimed the rules were necessary to protect property values. He claimed we were the problem, but no one was buying it anymore because the illusion had shattered. And now we were just getting started. It didn't matter how shiny his clipboard was or how many fake badges he printed once the real authorities stepped in. Robert Kendall's illusion of power began to unravel like cheap thread. But by then, the damage was done. My son wouldn't ride his bike past the corner anymore. My elderly neighbor was afraid to plant daisies, and a whole neighborhood had been living under fake laws for nearly 3 years. Someone had to clean this mess up, and we weren't waiting around. The police showed up that Monday. Not just one cruiser, 3 detectives, a property crimes investigator, and an officer from code enforcement. They served Kendall with a subpoena and seized 2 laptops, his HOA vests, a lockbox filled with uncashed checks, and my personal favorite, his handmade notice of violation stamps. All fake. He stood on the porch trying to spin it. "This is a witch hunt. These people don't understand community standards." I was just trying to protect the integrity of our homes. His wife stood behind the screen door, pale and silent. But no one came to his defense, because the neighborhood had seen the truth now, and truth is hard to unsee. That night, a city investigator visited us. She asked to speak to Noah privately. I sat nearby, heart clenched, as my son explained what happened, how Kendall had shouted, grabbed his backpack, and yanked him off his bike like he was a criminal. Noah's voice trembled only once. When I saw my dad running toward me, he said, "I didn't feel scared anymore." Meanwhile, Marcus was doing what Marcus does best: strategic response. He wasn't just calling friends anymore. He was pulling in favors from former teammates, combat instructors turned state police, Army lawyers, a guy who used to do risk mitigation for embassies. They reviewed our timeline, our evidence, and they came back with one word pattern. This wasn't just some rogue neighbor on a power trip. This was calculated manipulation, legal-looking threats, doorstep intimidation, cash-only demands, targeting the elderly, immigrants, and young families. It was a template, and Kendall had likely done this before. On day 7, the city called a public hearing to address the recent events in Crestview Hills as the email said, but everyone knew what it was about. Over 150 people showed up. Neighbors, reporters, even council members from nearby communities. Marcus and I sat in the front row. Noah held my hand. The mayor stepped to the podium. "We are here," she said, "because someone abused our silence. But that silence ends tonight." Then she called the first speaker. It was Mrs. Chavez. She trembled as she spoke, explaining how Kendall fined her $200 for yard clutter when her grandkids left chalk on the sidewalk. "I thought I was breaking the law," she said. I didn't know. I didn't know it was all fake." She broke down in tears. The audience sat in stunned silence. Next came Mr. Hayes, then a teenage girl who was told her wheelchair ramp was unsightly, then a mother whose son was stopped from skateboarding in his own driveway. By the time I stood to speak, my voice was steady but full. "I didn't come here looking for a fight," I said. "We moved here to raise our family, to give our son a safe place to grow." I paused. Instead, a man in a vest assaulted him in the name of rules he made up. Then I looked right at the city panel. And the worst part, for a while, we all let him, but not anymore. By the end of the hearing, the panel issued 5 formal resolutions: a permanent ban on self-appointed enforcement titles in Crestview Hills, criminal charges against Kendall for impersonation and fraud, restitution fund established for anyone fined under false authority, a new community liaison board, elected democratically, and public recognition for every resident who stepped forward. Marcus declined the award. He just shook the mayor's hand and said, "Just do right by these people." The next day, Noah got back on his bike, helmet secure, laces tied. He looked up at Marcus. "Can I ride past Mr. Hayes' place today?" Marcus smiled. "You can ride as far as you want, son." No clipboard was going to stop him now. Marcus didn't need to throw a punch. He stood still while Kendall raged, sputtering excuses, name-dropping imaginary HOA boards, waving around a tattered pamphlet like it was the Constitution, but no one was listening. By now, the entire neighborhood knew. There was no HOA. The rules Kendall enforced were photocopies of templates he'd pulled off Reddit, his badge a laser-printed sticker, his legal authority total fiction. And when the final subpoena landed that Thursday morning, it was Marcus who handed it to him. "You're done here," Marcus said. Not with anger, but with the kind of firm finality only a man trained to end conflict can deliver. Kendall stared at him, eyes wild. "You don't understand. This neighborhood needs order. They need someone to keep the line." "The line?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You assaulted a 10-year-old. Kendall laughed high, sharp, desperate. "He was trespassing on HOA property." "That sidewalk is public domain," I said, stepping forward. "And there's no HOA." That's when Kendall snapped. He lunged not at Marcus, but at me. He never reached me. Marcus didn't flinch. With a single shift of weight and a twist of his arm, he intercepted Kendall mid-motion. No punches, no anger. Just a clean takedown, an open palm shoulder control and pivot that dropped Kendall to the grass with a thud. Marcus stood over him, calm and steady. "Make another move," he said, "and you'll be explaining it to real law enforcement from a holding cell." Kendall wheezed, humiliated, face in the dirt, neighbors circling around. "Mrs. Chavez muttered, 'About damn time.'" The next day, Kendall moved out. His U-Haul didn't make it down the block before someone taped a bright pink sign on the tailgate, "Fake HOA Enforcer." By Felicia. Nobody claimed credit, but nearly everyone smiled. It didn't stop there. A formal audit revealed over $28,000 in fines he had collected unreported, untaxed, and completely fraudulent. Half of it had come from elderly residents who didn't speak English fluently. He was charged with impersonating a public official, assault of a minor, tax evasion, and wire fraud. But you know what hurt him most: the silence. No one came to defend him. Not one neighbor vouched for his character. Not one letter was submitted to the judge asking for leniency. Not even his wife spoke at the hearing. Meanwhile, Crestview Hills transformed. That weekend, we held a community cleanup and barbecue, no HOA needed. Kids chalked the sidewalks with rainbows and superheroes. Old men played cards under the oaks again. A mural was painted across the community center wall that read, "Respect is not enforced, it's earned." Marcus didn't say much. He just grilled hot dogs and watched Noah race laps around the block. Free. I looked around at the community we almost lost to fear and illusion. And I realized something: power isn't what you hold. It's what people believe you deserve. Kendall had held none. He just acted like he did until people stopped buying it. But Marcus, he didn't need a badge to lead. He never needed a vest. You'd think it ended when Kendall got arrested. But no, that was just the break in the fever. The real work began after. The damage he left behind ran deeper than we thought. Not just financial, though he'd extorted nearly 30 grand, but in the trust between neighbors. People didn't wave as easily. Sidewalk chats stopped mid-sentence. There was a nervousness, like we were all wondering how we let it get this far. How did one man, just one, with no real authority, get so many of us to kneel? The truth hit hard. We let him. A month later, the trial came. Kendall pled guilty. The video footage from Noah's helmet cam was damning the moment his little body got yanked clean off the bike. His shriek, my scream, and the sickening silence afterward. Add to that Marcus's calm takedown on video and the public outrage online, and Kendall's lawyer advised him not to fight. 3 counts of impersonating an officer, 2 of assault, multiple fraud charges. He was sentenced to 18 months in county jail, plus restitution. He cried in court, said he was just trying to restore order to a declining neighborhood. The judge looked unimpressed. Order built on lies is just another word for control. Boom. Bang. Done. But our healing, that took longer. The real turning point came at a town hall, ironically, in the very gymnasium Kendall used to host his HOA enforcement meetings. Marcus and I were invited to speak. Neither of us wanted to. We didn't ask to be the face of change. But I looked at Noah that night riding his bike freely again. Chin up, eyes bright, and I knew we had to. So I stood, cleared my throat, and said my son was hurt. My husband stepped in, and our community woke up. There was a pause, then clapping, then cheers, then silence again. Marcus stepped beside me and said simply, "It's not about power. It's about protecting people." That line stayed with us. We painted it across the old HOA office, right after it was converted into a neighborhood library and co-op space. The fake Rules Enforcement Center was now the heart of something real. In the months that followed, real community leaders emerged. Mrs. Chavez started organizing senior wellness walks. The Patel twins, both teens, created a digital bulletin board where people could post events, report problems, or offer help. We even formed a voluntary neighborhood alliance, not an HOA. No fines, no power plays, just people helping people. It worked because we remembered the cost of blind compliance and the power of standing up not just for ourselves, but for each other. And Kendall, he got out of jail after a year, moved out of state. Nobody talks about him much, but his name, it became a warning in our community. Don't go full Kendall. It means don't let a little power go to your head. Don't mistake silence for consent, and never ever touch someone's kid. As for us, we're stronger now. Marcus went back to teaching advanced defensive tactics, but now he's got a local group of dads and moms meeting every Saturday for self-defense classes. I started speaking at local events on civic accountability, fake authority, and parental advocacy. Noah's story went viral, but we turned it into something more: a platform, not a spectacle. People ask me if I'm glad it happened. No, I'd never wish that fear, that moment of helplessness, on any mother. But I am proud of how we rose, how we came together, and how my husband, quiet and deadly as he is, taught us all the most powerful lesson: real strength never needs to raise its voice. It just stands tall when it counts. Have you ever seen someone abuse fake authority in your community? What did you do? Let's talk about it, because justice doesn't start in court. It starts at home with the courage to say enough.